Thank you for taking the time to learn about this exciting and defining technology. Here we will discuss the dilemma of autonomous or self-driving cars. Given that the development of self-driving technology is just around the corner, we must ask, who will have to carry the burden of this change, and who will benefit from this? Like the Industrial Revolution, this disruptive technology will likely displace the least adaptable of us. And also, like the revolution, it will give many people access to the world in a way they have never had before. To begin, let me quote one of the leaders of the development of self-driving technology. Self-driving cars are the natural extension of active safety, and obviously something we should do. Is it that obvious, though? If it's not, then it certainly is inevitable.
So let's talk about some of the benefits of the self-driving technology. Obviously, anyone who drives or is driven in cars is going to benefit, because self-driving cars claim the ability to reduce accidents caused by human error. A reduction in the number of accidents caused by inexperienced drivers would have long-term benefits across many populations. Despite costs stemming from the loss of life or physical injury, insurance costs would decrease, first responders would spend less time on our roadways, and police would have less work in traffic violations, freeing them up to manage other forms of crime and many other benefits. Working in metropolitan areas or attending school where parking is limited or expensive makes driving prohibitive and time-consuming. Self-driving cars could transport workers and students to their respective destinations, then continue on their taxi services. Individuals would spend less time looking for parking, navigating pay stations, and walking to their offices or classrooms. Vandals will find fewer cars to target, and concerns of walking through parking lots alone after dark could be alleviated with door-to-door pickup options. Employers may expect increased productivity as a result of fewer late arrivals or absenteeism due to auto mechanic failure, accidents with other drivers, or traffic tickets. There would be fewer angry people on the road, frustrated with traffic, and fewer people arriving at their destinations feeling angry and frustrated. Imagine the change to the downtown streets when parking lots and curbside parking disappears, giving way to wider roads and faster commutes with safer bike lanes and quieter roads. Fuel costs would reduce with less starting and stopping and more consistent driving, and consumers would benefit from reduced retail costs due to more reliable and less expensive long-haul transport. The former CEO of Uber shared this quote about some benefits he saw. "The world is going to go self-driving and autonomous because a million fewer people are going to die a year. Traffic in all cities will be gone, significantly reduced pollution, and trillions of hours will be given back to people. Quality of life goes way up." Did you know that the leading cause of death of those aged 15 to 20 is motor vehicle crashes? How would we not benefit by reducing the deaths of the next generation?
So whose rights are exercised? Those who can't drive. Importantly, that's a good group of the least among us. The disabled will have increased ability to get from their homes to points of interest. Someone who is blind may be able to speak directions to a car. Someone with motor control issues can still have the car take them to their destination. The elderly. Taking the keys from one's parents is one of the most difficult choices children can make, and is often done too late. In a recent example, Prince Philip of England hit a pedestrian at the age of 97, and the royal family had to take his keys. It's a point of tension that really marks aging in the US, where public transportation is much less prevalent than elsewhere in the first world. And lastly, the young, who can now make it easier to get from school to soccer practice and navigate cities, which are much larger in the United States than they are elsewhere. And finally, those who can't afford to own a car. The increase in taxi services because of the lack of need for man hours will make it much cheaper to get around and reduce the need to buy a car and invest all that capital. Whose rights are ignored? There are 3.5 million truckers in the United States. It is one of the most important jobs available to those without a college education, and one of the best paying. There are also 300,000 taxi drivers and hundreds of thousands more employed in the gig economy. These are the jobs most threatened, and they're not easily replaced by other blue-collar jobs. Other blue-collar jobs are also under stress in the US economy, and truck driving is ubiquitous, available in every location. Switching to something like oil rig running may be more difficult due to the remote nature, and other jobs may require technical skills or college education. These people will be most impacted, and their families, if they cannot provide for them. And finally, car and driving enthusiasts. US culture has been built around the car since its ubiquity post-World War II. After replacing that for homogeneous cars that get from point A to point B might take a piece out of that culture.
Moving on to economic benefits. The Association for Safe International Road Travel estimates road crashes cost the U.S. $230 billion annually. More importantly, currently over 1.2 million people die internationally in road crashes. That's 37,000 in the U.S. alone. Now, self-driving vehicles will reduce the number of road accidents. Said differently, self-driving vehicles will save lives. Now, you can't really put a dollar value on life. However, the Department of Transportation puts a statistical value of life at 9.2 million. So if you could reduce the number of U.S. road crashes that result in deaths by 50%, that would save over $170 billion annually. Additionally, the average driver spends 157 hours per year driving. As Kiara touched on, that time can be spent on other productive tasks, such as getting a start on your work, reading a book, paying the bills, etc. Additionally, to take autonomous vehicles to market, many jobs will be created in the tech industry, specifically relating to the AI technology that will be needed.
With all this talk of benefits, it's important to remember what are the legal requirements, what are the parameters upon which these benefits can happen. Well, to illustrate, let's take the example of Elaine Herzberg, a pedestrian in Arizona that was killed by an autonomous car in March 2018. Herzberg's death illustrates the complexity behind the legal requirements of autonomous vehicles. For example, who was at fault in that accident? Was it the manufacturer, the company that made the AI that allowed the vehicle to operate, or was it Uber, the company that owned the car? Or was it the safety driver, the person behind the wheel? Or was it Elaine herself? All these are very important questions to consider as we analyze the legal requirements of these self-driving cars. So let's take a look at both the federal and state level as far as these requirements are concerned. So at the federal level, we have the National Highway and Transportation Safety Administration releasing guidelines for automated driving systems, which these guidelines were just that. They were guidelines. They weren't parameters. They weren't rules or laws. And the DOT and NHTS explained themselves, saying that they didn't want to impede the progress with the progress of automated vehicles with unnecessary or unintended barriers to innovation. So that's why they were vague. The state of Arizona, the state in which the accident happened, had much more specific requirements. And this is for cars levels SAE 4 or higher. And in this 2015 executive order, they said that vehicles must maintain minimal risk conditions, must have registration, must have registration and insurance requirements down pat, and comply with any applicable federal laws. And that's just a picture of the SA automation levels. As you can see, on levels 4 and 5, high automation and full automation, a driver is not required, but recommended. It's optional. And so some final implications to consider are the intellectual property, the data security, and driver manufacturer responsibility. As far as intellectual property, it would be, excuse me, the AI, the programming that goes behind these vehicles, and the proprietary codes that could lead to a trade secret arms race. There's also data security. These cars record data on how, when, and where these individuals drive. And then, of course, driver manufacturer responsibility, as we get closer and closer to full automation with vehicles, that responsibility is going to shift from the driver to the manufacturer. It's just a question of how much.
The legal requirements and economic benefits prompt an ethical discussion around the design, coding, and manufacturing of driverless cars, and the instigation of a driverless car society. These machines require advanced technology and complicated programming to allow them to recognize traffic laws and identify interferences in the road. Embedded in that code is a decision-making algorithm. Driving the speed limit and stopping at red lights is easy, but most decisions on the road are more complicated. To illustrate, consider a scenario where you are driving down the highway with a truck in front of you, a motorcyclist to the right, and an SUV on the left. Assume that an object falls out of the truck bed in front of you. A collision of some kind is unavoidable. So what do? Do you smash into the object that fell out of the truck bed, causing harm to you and your vehicle? Do you swerve out of the way into the SUV, knowing the SUV has a high safety rating? Or do you swerve into the motorcycle, harming only the one person rather than the 6 people in the SUV? The trick is that your reaction in this scenario is simply that, a reaction. You don't have time to consciously weigh all the costs and benefits and then make a decision. You, as a human, simply react. A self-driving car, however, does not react. It is programmed to decide and make a conscious, premeditated decision based on all of the factors it recognizes. So how do we decide what the car should do? Should cars be programmed to follow utilitarian ethics, for example, doing whatever benefits the greater number? Or should vehicles be programmed to follow duty-bound universal ethics, for example, thou shalt not kill? Let's consider a couple other scenarios, akin to the classic trolley problem. Suppose you're in a self-driving car that has a failed brake system. As you approach an intersection, the car recognizes several pedestrians in the road. It also recognizes one pedestrian on the sidewalk. What should the car do? Should the car continue the course and kill the 4, or should it swerve onto the sidewalk and kill the 1? What if the 4 are jaywalking or breaking the law, and the 1 is obeying the law? Does the answer change? What if there are an equal number of people in the road and on the sidewalk? Does it matter if the people are young or old, black or white, homeless or wealthy? What if the alternative to hitting the people in the crosswalk is swerving into a brick wall, killing you, the driver? What should the car do? These are the questions that self-driving cars will have to answer, and the answers may be subject to the biases of the car companies, owners, and software engineers that work on their algorithms. Apart from algorithms and programs, the long-term interests of society and companies must be considered. As mentioned previously, a driverless car hit and killed an Arizona pedestrian walking her bike across the street in 2018. But this is not the only accident that's been experienced by self-driving cars. Nevertheless, should that deter us? Suppose that self-driving cars could eliminate 99% of auto-related accidents in the next 10 years if implemented, but that it would take an additional 50 years to eliminate the remaining 1% of accidents? Is it right to wait 50 years to implement the vehicle technology so that no accidents would occur when self-driving cars hit the road? At current rates, that would mean more than 60 million auto-related deaths that could have been avoided by implementing at a 99% safety rate. How many bumps in the road are acceptable given a long-term perspective on society's well-being, or is one bump too many?
What is the right way forward here? Do we have a choice in the matter at all? And can we resolve these dilemmas before this technology becomes reality? We don't know, but what we do know is this. The potential here is enormous. Autonomous vehicles will be as important as the internet. Thank you for your time.